Today in the bunker, we're going to build some lights suitable for the Underhive or other dystopian or post-apocalyptic terrain. Start with some drywall tape, some chipboard, and a piece of drinking straw. We're going to cut this drinking straw. We're going to try and cut everything so it's the same length. So I'm going to trim up this piece of straw to match. So just our light here. So we'll just find our scissors. We'll cut that to the same length. And then what we're going to do is cut that in half. That's a little fiddly, but it's not too bad. Okay, now we're going to take that half, we're going to use some hot glue, kind of fill that in, trying not to glue it to our hand, like I just did. If you're playing along at home, there's your chance to take a shot. Okay, so what you want to do is kind of bulk that out a little bit with the hot glue so that it doesn't immediately get squashed. And then what we can do is lay a bead of glue on there and then try to do this where we can see it. Okay, and that's the basis of our light right there. Get the strings off. And if it needs a little more in the ends, you can kind of put some in there. All right, so next we'll add some end pieces. So we'll cut those out because I didn't have that prepared. All right, little end pieces. We're gonna cut those, basically use the same dimensions that you did for the backing piece. Just cut one, for each side that's a little shorter. My lighting is really off today. And then you could take and put a little dab of hot glue on there. Or you can super glue it or PVA it, or, however best suits your construction method. Alright. Alright, so we've got that on there. And now we will attach our protective grid. For that, we're just going to use a little bit of super glue. We'll just lay a bead on there. Take our drywall tape. Lay that into place. We're going to let that dry. So as soon as that's completely dry, then we'll measure that, wrap it around, cut it off, attach it. All right, so we're going to add some super glue. A couple of spots along there. And we'll just push that down into that, maybe. It's a bit fiddly until you can get the glue to go off, but and sometimes the drywall tape doesn't really want to cooperate. You can kind of work with it if you want to have some sort of damage or wear on there. All right, so we'll let that dry well, and then we will get ready to paint it. To prime these, you could spray them black or gray or red or whatever. I'm going to use some Mod Podge and black paint because it's a little chilly outside to spray stuff. The primer acts a little weird at those temperatures, so we're going to get that brushed on. We'll just take some of that, if we can open it. Just make sure we get good coverage on it. All right, we'll let that dry and then we'll get ready to paint. After coating the whole front and back with some Mod Podge, I'm just going to take some black craft paint and just give this a primer coat. Sort of just lay down some shadows and whatnot. I'm not going to paint the very back. You can, it doesn't matter. It's easier to hold on to if it's not maybe painted all the way around. So we'll let that dry and go to the next step. Once the black is dry, then I'm going to hit it with some raw sienna, just because everything that I'm doing currently needs to be sort of rusty. You could certainly skip that step and just go right to a color or metallic or whatever, but I like to have an undercoat of rust on there. Or you could make it even rustier. No right or wrong. It's whatever fits your setting, your Underhive, Wasteland, whatever. Alright, so we'll let that dry and go to the next step. Next step, we're going to dry brush a little craft silver over that. Gives it kind of a tarnished, rusty look. And we'll do the whole thing. So we pick up that metal grate, that covering over the light. So we'll let that dry well, and then we'll go back and we'll pick out the actual light itself. Paint the lights, just use whatever colors kind of match whatever other lighting you may have. I'm going to do two of these, one using greens and one using yellow and white. But, you know, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just whatever matches. So just very carefully pick that area out. Alright, so we'll continue on. After a little paint and some highlights, they don't look too bad, and you could add some OSL or not as you see fit. You could even make these darker like they're dead. They're not lit. As a note, if you wanted a larger light, you could use the entire straw. Just fill that whole thing with hot glue to firm it up, and then cover it with that drywall tape just like we did there. These are pretty good for like Necromunda or whatever to stick on a building or on a hive wall. Fairly cheap, fairly useful, easy to do, a little fiddly, but you know, not too bad, especially if you sit down and do a bunch of them at once. So hopefully that was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and if you are, I thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful day.